Hello, welcome to Walk the Cinema podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the 2012 Danish movie, The Hunt, not to be confused with any other The Hunt.
Yeah, this movie is kind of hard to talk about, I'd say.
Yeah, I guess we should start by saying why we watched it, because episode number 2, the second ever episode we did, was
Another round.
Yeah, another round, Thomas Vinterberg and Mads Mikkelsen, and we really like that. And this is something we were going to cover eventually, because it's the same two people, and it's a movie of theirs that's even highly regarded. But it's a completely different energy. Like, you can tell it's, the same director, very obviously. It's the same star that puts a very solid performance. And it's about a hard societal topic, but I think that's where the similarities end.
I agree.
The energy is completely different, obviously.
Yeah, and I mean, The Hunt is more of a taboo subject than Another Round, I would say, because this deals with child predators. And so basically, for those of you that don't know what it's about, essentially, it's about this man who works at a nursery or pre-K. They call it a nursery in the movie, but he works with children, young children. And one day he gets accused by one of the children of being sexually inappropriate with her. Even though we've seen the evidence, like, through his lens that that's never happened. Mm-hmm. But he gets wrongly accused, and it kind of turns into him being labeled as a child predator, and so that's how he is now treated.
Yeah, it's the witch hunt that he goes through, which that's what the movie's about. Like, some people think it's about fake accusations or whatever, but it's not. It's really about people trusting a kid that's just saying silly things, which that's what she calls it. Multiple times where she says, I said silly things, I didn't mean it, I don't know what they meant. She just said that because her older brother showed her a picture of a man's wee-wee. Mm-hmm. And that's why, that's fresh in her mind. She was shocked by it, so once she gets upset at the teacher, because she has a little crush on the teacher, right? And the teacher kind of, pushes her away from that. Yeah. And she feels embarrassed and upset, so she's like, oh, he's ugly, and also this. And that starts the whole...
And it spirals from there.
Witch hunt, where as soon as she says that, people start asking her leading questions.
Well, it's kind of like this thing where it's showing the perspective of people in the community jumping to conclusions rather than waiting for, like, actual evidence to arise. So, like, in a perfect world where you're innocent until proven guilty, you would have this accusation. The teacher would immediately go to the police, tell them about the accusation. The police would then do the investigation, and then if anything came up, people would be notified then.
Yeah, and I do think if this went to the police, you could very easily and obviously figure out that nothing happened
very quickly. But because it didn't, because it started off with the teacher, the head teacher, who was a woman, who's an older woman who ran the nursery, I suppose. She brings an acquaintance in to ask the girl questions, and they're all very leading. They're all yes or no questions. It would never work that way, really, if your police department or investigation department was competent. Because obviously it's really easy for children just to nod their head yes or no to questions that may not have happened, because they're children. They don't really understand the complexities of questions yet.
And I understand if you truly believe that this happened to the child, of course you're not going to bother with the adult. Like, you got to protect the child first.
Yeah.
And I get that, but at the same time, children make stuff up, which the teacher does bring up, that she has a vivid imagination.
Yes.
But
she doesn't think that she would make that stuff up, which is true. Like, in a scenario where she wasn't exposed to anything sexual, she would never have been able to conjure that up. But since her brother and his friend showed her inappropriate pictures, that's that's introducing that into her brain, which is
it's just
so
unfortunate.
frustrating. Because I've seen a lot of this happen in real life where older siblings do kind of corrupt younger siblings, you know? And it's unfortunate because I know that in a lot of cases these older siblings don't really know the repercussions of introducing them to, you know, curse words, inappropriate pictures, inappropriate speak, you know, all that stuff. They don't realize how damaging it is because they didn't have to go through that typically, you know.
Right.
They got to progress as they age, but when you're showing like 4-year-olds that, like, or, you know, cussing in front of 4-year-olds, it kind of...
It clearly affected her
yeah.
in this movie, and it probably affects her in real life as well. But it affected her, and clearly that's all that she could think of as a negative, because she was, you know, kind of scared of it from her reaction, so it's the first thing that comes to her mind when she's just like, oh, I don't like this guy, he's a poo-poo head.
Yeah.
Whatever. And that comes out, and everyone's like, whoa, why would you say that? You have no reason to say that unless he actually did it. And I get that, but the movie shows the prosecution of a witch hunt, and how a society just turns on you, and a stone that's cast can't be uncast. That's the ending of it, where even after the parents of the girl realized that she was just lying, and the police realized nothing happened, some people still don't want him there because the stone has been cast.
Yeah. And I mean, it does play out like a witch hunt, because you have one person that's that made the accusations, and in this case it is a child, and then, you know, it moves into the fact that the teacher tells all the parents to look out for these signs of abuse.
Yeah, and that we don't see it, but obviously it leads to the parents asking the kids leading questions, and the kids
just saying yes or no.
Yeah, saying yes or no, and then all the kids start saying the same story that's not true. It doesn't even
match up with
it doesn't
reality.
match up with reality, because they say it's this color and this basement with this couch, and they don't even have a basement, so it couldn't possibly.
Yeah, it was the fact that all of these kids had the same story of the teacher, Mads Mikkelsen, taking them into the basement and describing the couch that was there, and, you know, all this other stuff. And when the police actually go and arrest him and then search the house, they find out that none of those statements are true. They don't have a basement. There's nothing there. So he is, like, acquitted, because at that point there's no actual definitive proof besides all of these children having the same, like, vivid imagination, or like the same story, because, you know, in like the real witch hunt trials, like, all of these women had these, you know, fits and stuff, these witch fits, and so, like, mass hysteria is a real thing, and it does kind of show that this is more mass hysteria than anything.
Yeah, but some people do think that this is dismissive of rape accusations, and that you know, there's a certain section of society that believes that a lot of them are fake, and it takes away from victims. Mm-hmm. It takes the power away from victims who are scared of saying it, because they might, you know, they already were victimized, and now they're scared that people are not going to believe them. Mm-hmm. I don't think the movie really plays to that at all, and I don't think that's a message that anyone involved in this would really appreciate that you take out of it.
I would still say that it sometimes a little bit teeters on that line for me, where it does kind of portray children as vivid imaginators and, like, you know, blah, 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 which it's hard because I see it from both sides. Like, obviously you want to protect children.
Right.
And in this case, there's no doubt in your mind that you would immediately think that something has happened to this child, because how would she know how to say those things, you know? But, you know, not involving some type of investigation before labeling this man as a witch hunt or as a child predator is a detriment, but it also would be I think it'd be really hard for me, and if I was in the same situation, to not immediately think that he's a child predator.
Yeah, I think that's a big flaw of the movie, because we do see him from his perspective, so we don't have any doubt that he's not. But I think emotionally that's what captures people.
Mm-hmm.
They know he's not, so they hate the villagers.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, yeah, we do as well. Like, that was the immediate reaction, that they're wrong, but at the same time, it's hard to imagine us doing anything different when we think a child got hurt.
And then the person is just kind of living their life and not facing any consequences.
Yeah. Of course, when we see it from his side, which is the movie, it's his perspective where he's completely innocent. We do feel sorry for him, and we do kind of hate the people that chase him. But at the same time, it's very easy for me to also see why they're doing that. It makes complete sense, even if it's irrational and it's not how society should work. We should respect, how the law works and how we follow up on these type of things, but it's hard emotionally. And this is based on real cases that happened. I think one was in Brazil, and then the bigger one that just really focuses on the details is a one from Norway. Can't say that word. And in that case, that happened in Norway, what the takeout was from it was that kids do lie. And because some societies see kids as pure and they never lie, they never hurt. And then other societies see kids as mischievous and, they say silly things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the north of Europe, you do think that kids are angels that would never do anything. And I think this does change that. And I think the real case did change that culturally a little.
Do you know how old the child was in the Norwegian case?
No, I mean, we're a movie podcast, not an investigative or political one, so we should talk more about the movie's qualities and flaws as a movie, I think. I really like the ending scene visually. I think it leaves it open just enough, because we see him get shot at, and I mean, my assumption is that it's someone warning him, you should still leave, I don't care what the court says, I still, don't like you, because he still has the predator tag on his name. But I do like it's kind of like dreamy, where we don't know if he's imagining it, just like, prosecution is still in his mind of being chased for a year.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that one of the things that it does show is that it's a year later and he has his girlfriend back, his kid still lives with him, so it really does feel like he, in terms of legality, was acquitted of everything, and this is how it should be. His life shouldn't be upended because the accusations weren't true. He never did anything wrong.
Yeah.
But then it does show that people are still out to get him, even if they're not outwardly all the time.
Yeah, again, the stone has been cast.
Yeah.
You're not going to change that for anyone. It was very tense. Just the body language of everyone when he does arrive at the hunting club. Everyone's very tense. A lot of people don't really, they seem like they shake their hand, but they want their hand back. They're not really, warm with him.
Yeah.
Which could be societal, but it could also be because
of his label now.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that, I do think that a lot of men in caregiving roles do experience this sensation of being looked at as if, why would you want to be a caregiver?
You're a grown man, why do you want to be around kids?
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate because there are, just like women, it's not weird for women to want to be around kids and to love children even though they're not their own. That isn't really looked down upon, but it is for a man, right? In a lot of instances.
I've seen even single fathers being like, oh, so the mom's not around, you're babysitting, or,
Well, I guess he gave mom a break, right?
Yeah, right. People are judging a single father for taking care of his child. That's really silly to me. Of course I want to take care of my child, but some people don't see that. They see, parents, dads don't care.
Yeah,
which is untrue.
Yeah. They don't actually care about being a dad. I feel like a lot of times is what people think. But, so you have this character that just is a really nice guy from what you can tell. And he's already going through something that's kind of hard, where he can only see his kid 2 days out of 14, I think, is what the current agreement was. And his kid wants to live with him, but the mom doesn't want him to. You know, all this other stuff. He's like going through some stuff, and he finally, at the beginning, he kind of starts to look up. He starts dating a girl. His son is gonna move in with him. He has a good job. He likes his job where he takes care of these kids.
It looks like a very fun job. The kids are having fun. They're learning. The teacher is like loving his job. Everyone there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like a great place to be as a 4-year-old kid.
Yeah. And then this happens and it crumbles down. So this movie made me really stressed, and it was very unenjoyable for me to watch.
Yeah, I think it does that in a traditional way, which I also don't love. Where it's like, oh, this guy's been through crap and it's getting better for him. Now let's destroy it even worse. And I think that type of storytelling does only serve to bring out emotional strength, like the emotional strength of the story. And I do think this movie gets mostly carried by its emotions and its feelings of just ickiness.
Yeah.
Because we felt terrible
yeah.
the whole movie. I mean, there was no...
Yeah, there really is no, like, it genuinely made me stressed out, because the way I watch movies is I really think about how the characters are feeling and what the characters are doing, and, you know, that this is actually happening to this fictional person, and it made me feel terrible because, you know, as a spectator that is seeing everything
from his perspective.
Yeah, we know that he's innocent. Right. We know this.
That's why it makes it just infuriating.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, you do start to hate the town people. You think this town sucks because they throw a rock through his window and kill his dog after the police searched his house and arrested him and found nothing, you know?
Right.
It's kind of like, how? But you can't blame them, because once you're labeled a child predator, that's a really hard label to get out of, even if you didn't do it, which is, you know.
You say you can't blame him, which I think it's the biggest problem of the movie, where it's like the emotions of this witch hunt are one-sided because of the perspective we get being his. So we never doubt him, and we just hate the villagers, even though if we're watching it from the outside where we don't know the truth, it'd be a lot harder to bring yourself to hate villagers that are just trying to defend a child's
multiple
well-being.
Children too, because at this point,
multiple
children had come forward with
and
it.
The reason those children came forward again, it's because the teacher was kind of a shit person. That's what she was. She gave him no chance. She didn't even talk to him. She told his kid about this before she even told him, which he's the one being accused, and he doesn't even know what he's being accused of yet.
Yeah.
And she's already made up everyone's mind before he even knows what happened. And I do think it's mostly on the teacher at that point. I think she's the one that really ramps up all of this.
Yeah, I would agree but it's hard to blame her a lot. I think she did a really poor job at actually protecting the children, and, you know,
she put ideas in their heads.
Yeah, and it's like she obviously is coming from a good place.
Right.
Like, she wants to protect the kids in her care. She feels really bad that this could have potentially happened.
Yeah, she wants
in her nursery.
She wants answers. She wants to make sure the kids are alright, but she approaches it so unprofessionally that she actually hurts the kids.
Yeah, because now they have gone through this thing where you don't know. They could potentially, like, really feel like something had happened to them throughout their entire lives, you know? Because as a kid, especially when you're young, things get muddled.
Yeah, your memories are just faded. You confuse reality with fiction.
Yeah.
That's pretty common for everyone, even for non-negative things.
Yeah.
Where they confuse TV shows and books with what actually happened because they're too young to completely form those memories.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, a lot of people also think that the real villain, quote unquote, is the older brother, which also he is to blame, right?
Oh yeah,
His
100%.
actions are stupid, and he's a teenager. He does stupid stuff, but that's damaging
Yeah,
to
and
a
I feel like as a
child.
teenager, I don't know, teenage boys need to. I don't know many teenage boys, but
Yeah,
my brother is kind of in that in between age group, and all his friends
are
are
stupid.
no, no, they're good kids. They're good kids, and that's why I think that I can't imagine a teenager doing that to his very young sister or allowing that to happen to his very young sister. It's so frustrating because I do blame the brother for doing that kind of thing.
There's a lot of blame to be put on everyone except the person that got blamed, which is the point of the movie. It's a witch hunt, but I do think it's flawed. And I know a lot of people think this is an amazing movie. It's in the Letterboxd Top 250. It's an Oscar-nominated movie. But I think it's flawed. I think it leans too much on emotions. And the perspective, I get it that it is supposed to be the teacher and we're supposed to know he's innocent, so we feel even sorrier for him. But at the same time, it kind of does take away from the validity of what the village is doing, because defending a child is a valid reason for this.
Yeah.
So I gave it an 8 out of 10. I do think it's very good drama. It's very well portrayed, and it does bring emotions out, and I think this would work on most people. Even if you don't love it, it is like a very powerful movie. But again, it is flawed. And this gets compared to M from 1931 by Fritz Lang, obviously because that movie's about a witch hunt. But that movie's very, very important to movie history, and I don't think this will be. I think Another Round is actually a better movie in that sense. Of course, I personally like it more, but I also think it's a movie that's going to last the test of time more, and it could be more influential than this would ever be. I think this is its own movie, and it works as its own movie, but I don't think overall it's going to be remembered as this amazing movie, but maybe I'm wrong.
I kind of went back and forth on whether I should give this a 6 or a 7, mostly because I just really could not enjoy this movie for a second. You know what I mean? Like I just felt stressed the entire time, which I guess good on the movie for bringing out that type of emotion.
I think it's trying to do that, but at the same time, it makes me not want to watch it.
Exactly.
So I get what you're saying.
But I do think that it deserves the benefit of the doubt because this does handle a very sensitive topic pretty well. If I'm honest, it doesn't really feel exploitive.
Right.
It feels, I mean, there are scenes where it's a little graphic and I don't quite understand why they're included. I don't know.
Especially violent scenes.
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting in that way that I'm not...
Right.
There's something about it that it's good. I can see that. It's a good narrative. It's a good drama. But it's just not for me. I would never watch this again.
And I think for us, especially, it's a good movie to talk about.
Yeah.
It's a very easy movie to talk about while being very hard to talk about because it is so layered in like societal norms and societal behavior that we can talk about just that. But then at that point, we're not talking about movie qualities at all. We're talking about the script, or we're talking about just society in general outside of the movie and how they would act. So it is a good conversation, but it does take out of it being a movie, I feel, at points. Where as a movie, that has a director, cinematographer, writers, actors, kind of we're just not talking about that as much as we're talking about
the
society.
Actual story, yeah. But I think that is a good stopping point for this.
Yes. I'm okay with never talking about this again.
Agreed. But we'll see you guys next time.